The millionaire laughed when the boy said, "I can fix this." Then the impossible happened. The smell of motor oil clung to Isaac Torres like a second skin. At just 12 years old, he already knew the difference between a timing chain and a serpentine belt, the way most kids knew cheat codes for video games. The tiny Bronx auto shop where he worked with his father wasn't much. Cracked concrete floor, hand-me-down tools, an old coffee can doubling as a tip jar. But to Isaac, it was home. That morning they were running late. A client downtown had ordered a replacement fuel injector, and Robert, Isaac's father, insisted they deliver it personally. "People still pay more when you look 'em in the eye," he'd said, tossing the wrapped part into a ragged backpack. Isaac had barely finished cleaning the grease from under his nails when they locked up and headed toward the train. But fate had other plans. As they crossed Fifth Avenue just past 50th Street, a deep, angry honk echoed across the intersection. Traffic was frozen in place. Horns screamed in protest as a sleek, obsidian-black Rolls-Royce Phantom sat lifeless in the middle of the crosswalk, its polished hood reflecting the chaos around it like a mirror of New York's impatience. From the driver's side stepped a man in a tailored navy suit, shouting into his phone. His salt-and-pepper hair was slicked back, his expression hard and unimpressed. Even from a distance, Isaac recognized him. Charles Redford, CEO of Redford Motors, a man known as much for his disdainful interviews as his billion-dollar car empire. "Of course I'm stuck," Charles barked into the phone. "It just died in the middle of Fifth Avenue. Find someone, I don't care who. Get me out of here now." People had gathered. Phones came out. TikTokers were live. The world was watching, and Charles Redford was melting down. Isaac nudged his father. "I think it's the ECU," he muttered. Robert shook his head. "Don't even think about it. That car's worth more than our shop." But Isaac was already walking. "Excuse me, sir," he said, tugging at the sleeve of Charles's blazer. The CEO turned, frowning at the boy before him. Grease-stained jeans, oversized hoodie, dirt under the fingernails. "Kid, this is not the time to sell candy or whatever you're doing." Isaac didn't flinch. "I'm not selling anything. I think I can fix your car." Charles laughed, a short, sharp bark. "You think you can fix a Phantom?" He looked around theatrically. "Ladies and gentlemen, the savior has arrived. He's what, 12? 12 and a half, Isaac said. "And I work on cars every day. My guess is you've got a short-in-the-ground wiring to the ECU, probably cooked during yesterday's rain. These things happen with low chassis models." The crowd went silent. Even Charles blinked. "You know what an ECU is?" he asked, folding his arms. "Electronic Control Unit," Isaac said. "Think of it as the car's brain. If the brain doesn't get clean signals, nothing works." Charles smirked. "Fine, knock yourself out." Isaac stepped around the front, popping the hood with a click. He moved with quiet confidence, like a boy who had found his playground. Within seconds, he'd located the ground wire bundle and traced it to a corrosion point just above the wheel well. "Can someone lend me a bobby pin?" he asked. A woman in the crowd handed him one from her bun, wide-eyed. Isaac pulled out a pocket tool, a small strip of copper wire from his backpack, and began working. He twisted the bobby pin into a makeshift conductor, bypassed the faulty wire, and resecured it with the copper. "Try it now," he said, wiping his hands on his hoodie. Charles snorted. "You can't be serious." The engine purred to life. The crowd gasped. Phones caught every angle. Charles stood frozen, his mouth half open. Isaac stepped back, his expression calm. "It's temporary. You'll want to replace the entire wire set soon, but it'll get you out of traffic." Charles looked like he'd been slapped. "Where'd you learn that?" he finally asked. "My dad taught me," Isaac said. "I help him at our shop in the Bronx. We don't have cars like this, but machines are machines." A man in the crowd shouted, "Yo, kid just embarrassed a billionaire." Laughter erupted. The phone stayed trained on Charles, whose face was quickly draining of color. He looked at Isaac again, but this time the arrogance had slipped, just slightly. "Name?" he asked. Isaac Torres." The engine idled behind them, sleek and powerful again. "Well, Isaac Torres," Charles muttered, adjusting his cufflinks, "you've just cost my brand its dignity on Fifth Avenue." He climbed back into the Rolls and drove off without another word. The crowd broke into cheers. A woman patted Isaac on the back. "You've got magic hands, kid." "Yo, someone tag me in that video," someone else shouted. By the time Isaac and his dad made it to the client, the clip had already hit Twitter. Within 2 hours, it was on Instagram Reels. By dinner time, it was being replayed on local news. A 12-year-old Bronx mechanic school's millionaire CEO, the headlines were everywhere. Isaac watched the coverage with wide eyes as Robert brought him a plate of rice and beans. "You really showed him," his father said, pride swelling behind his tired eyes. "But don't let it get to your head. Fame fades, skill doesn't." Isaac didn't say anything. He just stared at the screen, watching himself on repeat, surrounded by strangers who had just discovered what his father had known all along. Talent doesn't ask permission. The next morning, Isaac's name was everywhere. The video of him fixing the Rolls-Royce on Fifth Avenue had crossed 5 million views overnight. Headlines called him a Bronx prodigy, the boy mechanic, the kid who outsmarted a billionaire. Memes spread like wildfire. Isaac holding a wrench like Thor's hammer, a photoshopped diploma from Mechanic Hogwarts, even fan art of him standing over a burning sports car like a hero from a Marvel movie. In their tiny garage tucked behind an old laundromat in the Bronx, Isaac sat on an upturned milk crate, rubbing his eyes as the TV flickered with another news segment. You saw it here first. 12-year-old Isaac Torres turned a billionaire's breakdown into a breakthrough. Robert glanced at the screen and shook his head, half amused, half worried. "Can't believe this world. You fix one car, and suddenly you're famous." Isaac smirked. It wasn't just any car. Before Robert could reply, a van pulled up outside. The logo on the side read NYC News Now. 2 reporters jumped out with cameras and microphones in hand. Robert groaned. "Here we go." The next hour was a blur of interviews, lights, and microphones shoved into Isaac's face. He answered questions with his usual calm confidence, his eyes lighting up only when asked about engines. "My dad taught me everything," he said, as Robert stood just outside the frame, pretending to organize tools. A producer whispered into the reporter's ear, mid-interview, "Charles Redford still hasn't responded." But far uptown, Charles Redford was responding, just not out loud. He sat in his penthouse office overlooking Central Park, phone in hand, watching the viral video for what must have been the 50th time. He paused it at the moment Isaac wipes his hands and says, "It's temporary, but it'll get you out of traffic." Something about the boy's voice, his posture, his focus, it was familiar. Charles stood, walked to the bookshelf behind his desk, and opened a small drawer. Inside was a photograph, worn and creased. A boy around Isaac's age, grinning next to a go-kart. His name was Benjamin, his only son, gone 3 years now. Charles stared at the photo, then at the paused screen, and back again. The resemblance wasn't just physical, it was the way both boys looked at machines as if they were alive. The way they moved, not to impress, but to fix. His thoughts were interrupted by the soft knock of heels against marble. Emma Redford, 22, his daughter, stormed into the office. "So you're just going to pretend it didn't happen?" she asked, arms crossed. Charles sighed. "Emma, don't Emma me. The internet's in love with him. Half of TikTok wants him on The Tonight Show, and you're acting like it never happened." Charles returned to his chair, brushing dust from his cufflink. "This isn't about fame, it's a kid from a garage who got lucky." Emma stepped forward, her voice rising. "He didn't get lucky. He was brilliant. And he reminded you of Ben. That's why you're running." Charles froze. Emma didn't. "You think I didn't notice? The first thing you did when you saw him was flinch. You looked like you'd seen a ghost. So now what? You're gonna bury him to protect your pride?" Charles said nothing. Emma leaned closer, her voice low. "You have a second chance to do something right. Don't waste it." Later that afternoon, the bell above the Torres garage door jingled. Robert looked up from under the hood of a Ford pickup. Grease streaked across his cheek. Isaac was organizing spark plugs by size. Standing at the entrance was Charles Redford. Isaac stiffened. Robert reached for a rag, suddenly aware of how worn his coveralls were. Charles glanced around the dim space, oil-stained floors, peeling posters, a sagging couch in the corner. Then he looked at Isaac. "You were right about the ECU," he said. "My mechanics confirmed it." Isaac nodded. "It was an easy fix." Charles smiled faintly. "Not for most people." There was an awkward silence. Then Charles stepped forward and held out an envelope. "This is a check, $100,000, to upgrade your equipment, fix up the place, hire help, whatever you need." Robert blinked. "You're serious?" Charles nodded. "There's more to come if you're open to it. But this is a start." Isaac looked from the envelope to the man who had once laughed in his face. "Why?" he asked. Charles hesitated, then sighed. "Because I saw someone in you I haven't seen in a long time." He turned to Robert. "I also pulled some strings. There's a private academy, Fairchild Academy. They specialize in engineering, design, innovation. I've secured a full scholarship for Isaac, tuition, transport, everything if he wants it." Robert was speechless. Isaac swallowed hard. "You don't even know me." Charles's voice softened. "No, but I should have tried to." From behind Charles, another figure entered the garage. Emma, dressed in jeans and a hoodie, offered a small wave. "Hey, genius," she said. Isaac blinked. Hi." Charles gave a short nod to Robert, then stepped back toward the door. Emma stayed. She looked around the shop. "This place is awesome." Isaac shrugged. "It's kind of a mess." "I like messes," she said. "They have stories." For the next few minutes, they talked. About cars, mostly. She had a basic knowledge, enough to joke about hybrids being the tofu of the car world. Isaac laughed more than he expected. When she finally left with her father, she turned and said, "See you around, Isaac." And for the first time since the video went viral, Isaac didn't feel like a meme. He felt seen. For the first time in years, the Torres garage buzzed with something more than just the clank of tools and the hum of old engines. New lifts had arrived. The brand-new diagnostic scanner sat like a throne in the corner. The walls were freshly painted, and a gleaming sign that read, "Torres Auto Solutions," hung above the door. It wasn't a palace, but it felt like one. Robert stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watching as Isaac gave Emma a tour of the space. She listened with genuine curiosity as he explained the new system Charles had installed: digital inventory tracking, a computerized scheduling board, a corner for student apprentices. Emma smiled. "So when do I get to learn how to change a tire?" Isaac laughed. "First, you have to learn the difference between a lug nut and a donut." Robert hadn't seen his son smile that much in months, maybe ever. But good things, it seemed, didn't last long in their world. The inspectors came on a Thursday. 2 men in grey windbreakers and grim expressions walked in with clipboards and barely glanced at the workstations before announcing the garage was being shut down for code violations. "Unsafe electrical wiring," one of them said flatly. "Non-compliant ventilation system. Improper disposal of hazardous fluids." Robert stepped forward, flustered. "What are you talking about? We just had the place inspected 2 weeks ago. Everything's new." "Doesn't matter," the taller inspector replied. "Order comes from the city. You'll be notified about a hearing. Effective immediately, you're closed." Isaac watched as they taped a red notice across the garage door. "Cease operations. By order of NYC Department of Safety and Enforcement." Emma pulled out her phone, already recording. "This doesn't make sense." Robert didn't speak. He just stared at the garage, his garage, like it had been condemned in his heart, not just on paper. News spread fast. The same outlets that had made Isaac famous now flooded the street with microphones and vans. Reporters swarmed. Robert refused to speak. Isaac stood silent beside him. Emma, however, was furious. "This smells like sabotage," she told one journalist, "and I'm going to prove it." She started digging. Charles tried to wave her off. "Let the lawyers handle it," he said, but Emma ignored him. She used her access to Redford Motors' internal communications and city records. What she found made her stomach drop. A permit revocation request filed 2 days before the inspection, a city inspector's signature, one known for consulting with large corporations. And at the top of the request, a name, Travis Mitchell, Redford Motors co-founder, Charles's oldest business partner, and the man who had, from the beginning, warned that mixing with street kids would stain the company's brand. Emma confronted her father that night, dropping the file on his desk like a weight. "You said you'd protect them," she said. "Instead, your own company stabbed them in the back." Charles's jaw tightened as he flipped through the pages. The signatures, the date stamps. "Travis wouldn't do this," he muttered. Emma snapped. "He already did." Charles found Travis in the executive suite the next morning, sipping espresso and reviewing sales forecasts. The moment Charles walked in, Travis smiled, like nothing had happened. "Morning. Good numbers this quarter." Charles didn't sit. He held up the printed report. "What is this?" Travis glanced at the papers. "Looks like paperwork." "You shut them down." "I filed a concern." The city followed up. "If the garage isn't up to code, it's not our fault." "Don't play dumb with me." Travis finally looked up. "Charles, you're jeopardizing our brand to play hero for some greasy street kid. A viral moment doesn't justify turning our company into a charity." "He's not just a moment," Charles growled. "He's got talent, integrity. He reminds me of—" "Benjamin?" Travis interrupted. "Yeah, I figured that's what this was really about." Charles took a step closer. "Say his name again like that and I swear—" "Easy," Travis stood. "I'm not the bad guy here, Charles, you are. You're letting guilt make decisions. But if you keep pushing this, if you keep siding with that boy, you'll drag us both down. Investors are nervous. One more misstep and Redford Motors burns." Charles stared at him, breathing heavy. Somewhere, deep down, he knew Travis had always been this way. He'd just chosen to ignore it. Not anymore. That evening, Justice for Isaac began trending on Twitter. Emma had leaked the documents anonymously. Screenshots of the inspector's report. Emails signed by Travis. Comments poured in. They tried to silence a 12-year-old genius. Redford Motors. Charged corrupt. Protect Isaac Torres at all costs. Local activists showed up at the garage holding signs. One read, "The Bronx builds brilliance." Another, "Talent doesn't live in zip codes." Someone even started a GoFundMe to pay for legal fees. Isaac watched it all unfold from the steps of the shuttered shop, his head low. Robert hadn't spoken much since the closure. He barely ate, barely slept, and that scared Isaac more than anything. Emma sat beside him, passing him her phone. "The internet's on your side." Isaac stared at the screen, at the photos, the signs, the flood of love and outrage. "I don't want people fighting for me," he muttered. "I just want to work." Emma smiled softly. "Then let's make sure you can." She looked at the garage behind them, then back at him. "This isn't the end, it's just the ignition." It didn't stop him. Even after the garage was shut, even after the red tape and legal threats, Isaac Torres kept fixing cars. He did it on the street, out of his backpack in parking lots and alleys. He helped single mums stranded with dead batteries in the rain. He patched radiator hoses with duct tape and hope. He showed up with a socket wrench and a smile and never took a dollar. And people noticed. Phones recorded. Videos circulated. TikToks with captions like "NYC's youngest mechanic saves the day" again racked up millions of views. Some showed Isaac working with a flashlight in his mouth. Others caught him teaching younger kids how to rotate tires. A photo of him giving a thumbs up next to a fixed UPS truck hit the front page of Reddit. The world had tried to silence him, but Isaac had turned a closed garage into an open movement. Emma watched it all unfold from her laptop, editing clips together like a film director possessed. She layered footage of Isaac's quiet acts of service with soft piano music, voiceovers from community members, even raw audio of the inspector shutting down the garage. Then she sat down in front of the camera and spoke directly. "My father's company tried to bury a story. This is that story." The video was 5 minutes long. By midnight, it had 10 million views. The next morning, protesters gathered outside Redford Motors headquarters. Some carried wrenches in the air like torches. Others held signs that read, "Support Isaac. Fire Travis. Bronx talent matters. Fixing cars. Exposing corruption." The same afternoon, a crowd formed outside City Hall. The pressure was no longer just digital. It was in the streets. On live television, the mayor was asked about Isaac's case. She paused, then said, "We're reviewing it. And we're going to make it right." Inside Redford Motors, tension brewed like a storm. Charles sat alone in the boardroom, watching Emma's video for the fourth time. Every clip of Isaac's calm, dirty hands brought something tight to his chest, something he hadn't felt since Benjamin. Conviction. He pulled out his phone. "Get the press," he said. "We're making a statement." That evening, in a crowded press room under harsh lights, Charles Redford stepped to the podium. Alone. "I built this company with my hands and my vision," he began, "and somewhere along the way I forgot what that meant." He paused, looked out over the sea of cameras. "We tried to shut down a garage run by people more honest and more gifted than anyone in this building. We failed them. I failed them." He took a breath. Effective immediately, Travis Mitchell is no longer with Redford Motors. The room murmured, gasps, flashbulbs. "And I'm doubling our original investment. $500,000 will go toward building a new community tech and auto innovation center in the Bronx, named after the young man who reminded us that genius doesn't wear suits." He pulled out a certificate. "This morning, the mayor's office awarded Isaac Torres a City Merit Honor for public service." A moment of silence followed. Then a standing ovation. The next week, the garage reopened. Only now, it wasn't just a garage. It had a new name etched in steel above the door. The Isaac Torres Innovation Garage kids from all over the city came to learn. Mentors volunteered. Redford Motors sent tools, parts, staff. The building buzzed with energy, not the energy of industry, but of opportunity. Robert stood near the front counter, wiping a tear as Isaac tightened a bolt on a donated electric scooter. The mayor shook his hand. News crews panned across smiling faces. Emma stood by the mural they'd painted on the outside wall. Isaac, mid-repair, a shining city skyline behind him. Later that day, she handed him a pair of keys. "New project," she said. He opened the garage door to find a rebuilt vintage Mustang, painted in midnight blue with a note on the dash, "She's yours now, just keep driving forward. CR." That night, Isaac and Emma cruised down Fifth Avenue, the city glowing gold around them. Traffic slowed, but no one honked. Some even waved. He glanced at Emma. "Do you think people will forget?" She shook her head. "Maybe. But that's not why we did it." He nodded. They drove on, not as mechanic and heiress, not as billionaire and boy from the Bronx, but as two people who knew that brilliance doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up, gets its hands dirty, and changes the world anyway. And Isaac? He wasn't done yet. He was just getting started.